Just answering questions, take 8. WAPTEK, could you explain the eclipse that's supposed to happen August 21st in the U.S.? They say only certain states will have total darkness. I don't get it. How can this happen? Why only certain states? First part. Obviously, the moon is between the Earth and the Sun many times. It's just that it doesn't really line up well. And that shadow can go above or behind or underneath or ahead of the Earth at the time. When we have an eclipse, it lines up nicely enough for timing and also physical position, because it isn't exactly the same angle as the Sun appears in the sky. Not exactly the same pattern. So when we do get a lineup, you will, because the shadow isn't really that big, I mean it's big, but it's not completely huge, at least most of the time. It's closer to us than it is, the Sun is. The Sun effectively, let's say this is the Sun and this is the Moon. If you're further east or west, you'll see this, where the Sun peeks out in front of it or behind it as it goes through. That's why it looks like a stripe going over. If you're north of the location, for instance, north of Oregon, what happens to be going through, it would appear to be above it, and it'll be below it, southern, or southeastern, or whatever, south of it, if you're lower. And because of that, you can actually figure out kind of how far away it is and kind of the angle of the Earth and kind of the shape of the Earth. It's kind of a useful moment because you could all pick, and this is a good idea, the exact same moment everybody could just watch a podcast and say, okay, now, and everybody just take a photo with a proper filter to get the diameter correct for the Sun and the Moon, and take a photo at the exact same second when it reaches the eclipse point, let's say, directly over the central Idaho. Just pick a random spot. And you'll all see it at different angles, and if you want to, you can sit down and do the math for it. The way we're able to figure out the pathways as a species is to just run literally math routines to figure it out. That's why math is useful in this way. Math works kind of as a modeling that doesn't use a physical object. Same reason the stopwatch with timing doesn't have to actually model physical time. It doesn't really have to. Now you can set up a bunch of parts and gears and pulleys and emulate the way the moon orbits the Earth and try to figure out the timing and that sort of thing, but you're better off using a piece of software like Stellarium or something like that. I was going to do a video on this, and what I was going to do is set it exactly the same moment and then take lots of screenshots north and south and east and west of that exact moment to get the perspective correct. And it's just a simulation, but again, on that day you can pick a specific time of day, like 10 a.m. in Portland, Oregon is when it's going to be at totality. 10 a.m. It's actually 10 a.m. 21 minutes 23 seconds almost exactly. It'll be over as much as possible. And if the moon was closer to the Earth, it would totally obscure the Sun a lot more, and if it's further away, you get a bigger ring around it, where you get a ring around it where you can see the outside edge of the Sun's corona. These are things that are documented throughout time. So the reason it isn't seen everywhere at the same time is the Earth is it's not really huge, but it is huge compared to the moon, and we can kind of see around it. Next, will this cause the New Madrid fault to vibrate, causing an earthquake? The moon and sun line up, like I said, all the time. They cause tides that are higher than normal or lower than normal. And that has the effect of causing the Earth to be disrupted the same exact way. It's just that it's not visually lined up perfectly. As far as gravity is concerned, it's almost the same lineup. The advantage that you would get from knowing that is, since the Earth rotates on its axis once every 24 hours, when they get a lineup like that, it basically causes the same amount of tension to spread out all over the entire Earth. To be blunt, and this is something a lot of people don't want to talk about, because then it takes away your ability to make a bunch of YouTube videos that get a lot of views, planetary alignments, or the moon and sun alignments, which would have slightly more gravitational pull, obviously much more gravitational pull, honestly, have no effect on earthquakes. I mean, they really don't. They should. They may actually have the effect of causing tiny ones that have the effect of releasing pressure. Earthquakes are caused by a buildup of pressure, not a release of it. And the moon, the Earth rotating on its axis with the moon effectively stuck here for like a day, would have the effect of pulling at the surface of the planet, the crust of the Earth, and probably releases more energy than it would build up. Remember, an earthquake is a release of energy that's tremendous. Having it release all the time, because the moon is always, always up there and we're rotating on its axis, our axis, probably reduces the earthquakes, not causes them. And again, I should point out something I've said in previous videos. If you take all of the planets and line them up, the amount of gravitational pull added to the worst case scenario for a tidal force from the moon and the sun amounts to an extra millimeter of height for water, maybe. And that's being very generous. It would be about 1/10 of a millimeter on average. It's not having an effect. There are some places on this planet that have tidal forces that cause height changes of water that can be dozens of feet. So that's truly insignificant. In fact, it's almost impossible to detect it. It's detectable, but it takes a lot of work. Next, I'll be covering the next part here. Someone asked me, what happened to the dust involved in the moon dust bag that was sold at the auction? I'm waiting for them to go by. Thank you for bellowing. If you don't want to be recorded on a YouTube video, don't yell as loud as medically possible as you walk around downtown Portland, or in this case, Northwest. So anyway, as I was saying, someone asked me very, very nicely, what happened to the dust? Thanks for the caps lock. The lady who bought the moon dust bag, as it's been called, isn't an internet conspiracy theorist. The facts speak for themselves here. Yes, they do. This was a sample bag that was brought back from the moon, and it was emptied when they landed. It's a decontamination bag, and by the way, it was made out of something much more similar to fiberglass. And what they did is they got all the dust out of it they could, and the rocks for all the sample material, because getting more would be obscenely expensive, and we still went back for more. And when she sent it in to get it tested, the things they tested would be the fibers the bag is made out of, the information on the bag, which included some serial numbers that wasn't visually available in a lot of the photos on the net, and the moon dust, which means they would have to take some of the moon dust out, and maybe, I don't know how it got damaged the second time. It may just be a simple error and may have actually not been damaged. I don't know. I'd like to see photos from either NASA or from the lady, and until that happens, I'm not going to believe either of them. I don't believe NASA when they say stuff. I want them to prove stuff too. But the most likely scenario for what happened to the moon dust that was still in the bag, or some of it, was the request by the lady to test to confirm it was the correct bag, which would mean, since there's just the bag and what was in it, they might have taken out some of the dust to test it. Now, the assertion here is not just a reach, but this is grasping at straws here. But here we go. NASA has been scrambling to get back every moon rock ever handed out. Citation, please. And I really mean that. I mean, you have to show that that's not just somebody's assertion somewhere that they're trying to prove something, that they've got a wide-eyed screaming attitude in their YouTube video. Let's try having somebody somewhat sane here say that, because I haven't heard anybody make the assertion that NASA has been trying to retrieve all the moon rocks. And then your statement was, the Dutch diplomat testing a fake moon rock and proved that it was a coral reef stone. Okay, this is the meme where somebody thought they had been given a moon rock, and the meme became that it came from Neil Armstrong, hand delivered. That's not true. That's literally not the facts involved. And that's not a smoking gun that every single moon rock is fake. That was somebody who handed a stone over they found to be very nice, and they liked it, and they handed it to someone as a gift, and the other person simply assumed it was a moon rock, and then the story just sort of got invented from there. It must have come from Neil Armstrong. The fact is that when it was tested, it was found out to be an earth stone, a stone from the earth, not an earth stone, but a stone that came from the earth. And there was never an assertion by the person who handed it to anybody that it came from the moon. This is literally a misunderstanding on some people's parts. Now the thing is that I'm going to post a link below to the refutation about this, but that doesn't do any good here, because the person wants to say that this fake moon rock was part of a bunch of things that proved we didn't land on the moon. What is the compelling reason to decide that we didn't land on the moon? Now I mean that. What is the compelling reason for it? I mean, what's the compelling reason to believe we went to the moon? Well, it was an internationally publicized event. There were literally thousands, if not millions, of people involved in it, involved in testing and confirming that it happened, independent radio astronomers trying to pick up signals from the moon and also from the people going there. There really isn't any reason to believe we didn't go to the moon. And I mean literally, there isn't any reason to believe it. This is something that the person has to defensively start screaming at the top of their lungs on YouTube channels, or being really obnoxious about it when they make these assertions. They immediately go for the gullet. They don't discuss the subject. So I'm going to parse this piece. Why are you saying that bag was a prop in a movie? Now, I'm going to explain this to you. If you can fake moon rocks enough to fool a bunch of scientists, okay, then why would you try to destroy, quote-unquote, the evidence from a bag that may not have actually been? You can just say, we can't authenticate this as an authentic bag. This looks like a fake that somebody made so they could sell it on eBay. It has a questionable past to it. The easiest thing for NASA to do, and this is Occam's razor being used to slash the throat of this stupid idea, is they could have just said this isn't really a moon bag. I mean, you can sell it as if, but we can't confirm it's a moon bag. It looks like a phonied up one. It's made out of beta cloth is what it's called, I think. You can just make a copy of it. It's not impossible to do so. In fact, there's enough information about it that you at home could probably make one. It's not really that complicated of a bag. The information about it has been published since the 1970s. I'm sure someone has made a fake. You can also just have the company that made them, the information from that, and use that. In fact, there was more than a few bags made. All NASA would have to do is say, it's not really a moon bag. It was somebody's fake that they were going to sell on eBay. And we're sorry you got it. It was originally gotten from the U.S. Marshals or whatever because it was in possession by somebody who shouldn't have had it. And there was a mix-up. They could have just very easily lied and said, that's a fake bag. Why in FARC would they say it's a real bag at all? In fact, if they said it was a fake bag, it would be sold for less and they could quietly bid for it and take it back and hide it. That's a real conspiracy theory. That's how you actually do things. You don't validate something so it's worth millions of dollars and then demand it back. What is it with amateurs posting these conspiracy theories? I can come up with a better... Munster in the library with a candlestick. Seriously, read some Agatha Christie. Read some Nancy Drew and start over, okay, please. This is a stupid idea. But let's just go with this. I'll include a link below about the rock that turned out not to be a moon rock. People assumed it was a moon rock. It got touted that way. It was propped up that way. It was hyped. That doesn't mean it was. And what about all the other ones? And what's with this assertion that they're trying to get them all back to try to prevent them from being examined? I've never heard of this one. I wonder if this is a new one. Waiting. It's amazing how extremely loud people need to be loud, and then when they have it pointed out that they're being excessively loud, they don't become loud. By the way, I got to point this out. If you feel uncomfortable when someone's making it really obvious you're being rude, good. So anyway, next. Here's some assertions about the Bible. This is a person attempting to not acknowledge that the Bible may not be the actual Word of God by twisting it into some other thing. And yes, this is about... Anyway, here we go. They supernaturally changed the Bible and they are torturing Christians secretly with directed energy weapons. Counterpoint. Or people are mentally ill and they dive into Bibles and such because they're trying desperately to get rid of having a tortured mind. And it doesn't do any good because reading fairy tales from 2,000 years ago doesn't fix anything. You'd be better off reading sci-fi. At least sci-fi is about the human condition and it's just thinly veiled auto-analysis of humanity done as a sci-fi story. By the way, a lot of the stuff in the Bible is basically sci-fi, what we would call sci-fi today. Bible told us evil men at the end would change God's truth into a lie. Counterpoint, from the beginning, these are retold and retooled stories from before birth of Christ, from 300 BC backwards. They were lied about from the beginning. When did this editing happen? God would allow this. Why would God allow His words to be twisted? Just saying. I think that to this Day of Atonement this year, 40 days from the solar eclipse. And then when that doesn't happen, are you going to renounce your belief system entirely like you demand everybody else does? Are you going to acknowledge that maybe you're just emotionally and psychologically tormented, and maybe you just need to get some help instead of rereading something that has nothing to do with it or anything else for the last 2,000 years? Just saying. public disclosure, I don't really believe the Bible's a bad book or any of the other belief systems and scriptures. I just think they shouldn't be overused. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.